Welcome to Fino Concepts. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up our application. For this show, I'm using Adobe After Effects, and I'll just click on New Composition. As always, I'm using a width of 1920 and a height of 1080, so we have a 1080p resolution. And the background color, I'll select a dark color. I don't know, I'm seeing 20 or much darker. I think 15 should be just fine. I'll just click on OK and OK. So this is what we have. Now this animation is going to be quite basic. The background doesn't actually matter. We can change it at any point in time. What I'm going to do is go up here where we have the tools options, and I'll select the rectangle tool, which is right here. Make sure that the fill is set to a specific color I want. So in my case, I'm going with, I think this blue color is okay. You know what, let's just go with the AE colors. So 380861, whatever color you want to use is totally dependent on you. And I'll just click and drag and drop a rectangle, a square like so, whilst holding down the shift key so that it doesn't deform like this. So I think somewhere around, something about this big should be just fine. Now make sure you have your align tabs. If you don't have that, go into window, make sure that align is checked. So I can put this, align this horizontally and align this vertically. Now you can see that we have this anchor point over here. I want to put it at the center, so hold down the control key and click on this icon which says pan behind or anchor point 2. Double click on it and it's going to put it at the center for us. This is looking cool. Now we are basically going to be duplicating this, so I'm going to the shapes layer. You know what, hit enter and let's call this fill, and we'll duplicate it. Hold down control key and press D. Now once we have that, I'll hit enter one more time and let's call this let's call this bigger square, and I'll hit enter and call this smaller square or something of that sort. All right, so for the bigger square, it's obviously going to come beneath, so you can have a bigger square in there. Now also I'll just put this at the center, the anchor point. Now I will make the smaller square smaller, obviously. So with that smaller square selected, hit S on your keyboard, X for scale, and I'll scale it about 90%. So it should be something like this. No, well, let's make it 85. I think 85 should be okay. And because the colors are the same, you are hardly noticing any difference. So I'll go back to the shapes tool, and for the smaller one, I'll change the color to a darker purple. So I think something like this should be okay, and I'll click on OK. You know what, let's make the bigger one a much lighter purple. I'm going to copy this code because that's the same thing I'm going to be using for my text. So for the text, grab the type tool, which is over here, and type in, well, whatever your initials are. In my case, I'm just using AE for After Effects, and I'll also put it at the center, so align horizontally and align vertically. Now you can see we have the anchor point also over here, so I'll double click on the anchor, I'll hold down the control key first and double click on the anchor point tool to put it at the center. So if I go back to my type tool, I can just select this and increase the size. You should be in the character options by now, and you should see that currently it's set to 100 pixels. So what I can do is I can just use the slider and increase it to whatever I feel comfortable. I think 150 should be just the right amount, and I'll put it at the center. Again, it's not at the center, so control double click to put it at the center. Let's go back to the type tool. So I'll highlight this and I'll select the fill color, so I'll click on that, and I'll use the eyedropper tool to sample this same color over here. Now I think the purple is too dark, so you know what, let's just go with this purple instead. So I'll copy this new one, then I'll move back to the bigger circle. Again, make sure that the shape is selected, click on fill, and I'll paste it in here like so, and I'll hit enter. So I think this is looking okay. So this is what I'm going to be animating. In case you have a logo, you have to be able to separate them into 3 layers for this to work. So I'll move the playhead to about 1 second and make sure that I select all 3 and hit S on my keyboard. So S for the scale, and I'll create a keyframe for all of them. Right click and go to keyframe assistant and click on easy ease. You can use the shortcut F9 if you want that. And I'll move this over to the beginning, and I'll set the keyframe, or the scale, sorry, to 0 for all of them. So what this does is just increases over here. Then basically this is it, very simple. But we don't want this effect, we want some form of bouncing in there. So before, you know what, let me just zoom in using this zoom or slider down here. Now before we get to the 1 second mark, I'll move about 2 frames, so 1, 2, which is somewhere around here, and I'll bring these keyframes over like so. This is okay. Then I'll move 2 frames forward, and I'll hit on the keyframe for any of them to create the exact same keyframe. So what it does is the keyframe I have here is going to duplicate the same thing over here for me. Now it is at this keyframe that I want to make a few changes, that is increase them. So I'll increase this by about 10%, so that makes it bigger. I'll increase this about 10%, so that should be 95, and this should also be about 10%. So this will make it look, it will become bigger and smaller all at once. So we have some form of bouncing in there. If I go ahead and play this, you can see that it becomes bigger and smaller. So that is that bouncing effect I'm looking at. So once we have these, I'll go back to the beginning. Make sure I click on this icon right here which says graph editor. I'll select one keyframe first, or one layer first. I'll click on that, and I'll stretch it over to the right like so. I'm not going to be playing around the second one or the second set of keyframes, just the first one. So I'll move over to the first one again, graph editor, stretch it all the way to the right. I'll select the second layer. Well, we don't have to keep changing. I'll select the keyframe rather, not the layer, click on that and stretch it out like so, and I can move back to the graph editor. What this does is it moves a bit slower than once it gets to the, sorry, let me just show you. Once it gets over here, it just speeds up and moves slower one more time. So if I go ahead and preview this, this is what we have. Quite neat. You can also go ahead and play with this, but I think I'm okay with this. The whole transition, it's a bit off. You know what, let me bring this over here and see how this also looks like. Alright, I think this is cool. So basically that's what I'm going to be doing for all the rest. That was done. I'll do the exact same thing for this, stretch it all the way to the left and select that keyframe and do the exact same thing for that as well. So let's preview and see. Okay, so we are having a much identical keyframing. So once we have this, so the next thing is to just offset this a little bit. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This should be the 6th frame because it's already even here, and I'll just move this or offset this over to that position, and I'll move about 3 frames, so 1, 2, 3, and I'll offset this a little bit so that they don't all move at the same time, and I should get something like this. Now this is okay. In case you also want to go crazy, you can rather offset it in the opposite direction. So I can bring this one over here, 1, 2, 3, and bring this over here, so whichever looks better for you. So basically that is it. If in case you want to use this for your logo or your initials, this is quite an easy way of doing it. You don't have to struggle so much going through or just anything of that sort. And if this isn't enough for you, you can also add in another text. So in my case, I'm going to add in the text Theo Labi. I should actually make this a capital letter, and I'll also center it. So again, make it smaller. No, let me make it a white text. With the text selected, hit P and bring the position down to somewhere around here. Now I'll select the text. Obviously I don't want it to be 150 pixels, so I'll make it smaller. I think somewhere around 60 should be just fine, and I'll put it at the center horizontally. Go into the y-axis and just make it something like this should be okay. Now you can see the anchor point is also here, so double click on that. Perfect. Now once I have that, I'm going to click on this rectangle tool and just create a rectangle around my text like so. So it doesn't really matter how big or small it is, just make sure it is covering the text. And once you have that, go into track matte. In case you don't have track matte set, just click on this toggle switches. You should see it once you do that. And in case it's still not showing, just right click at the top here, go into columns and make sure that mode is checked. Now, once you do that, you should see it. So shape layer 1 is the rectangle I just created. That is okay. What I'm going to do is, with the name Theolabi or the text Theolabi, I'll just click on none. I'll change the track matte from none to alpha matte shape layer 1. Shape layer 1 is just the shape created. So what this means is the text is only going to show where that shape is. So once we have the animation in like this, ending at 1 second, then our text should also come in probably around here, should be just fine. 10 frames after 1 second should be just fine. So I'll just create a keyframe for that at the beginning, hit F9 to easy ease, then I'll move over here once the text are coming in, and I'll change the Y position downwards. So you notice that because our rectangle is not over here, the text is not showing even though it is there. And I'll click on the graph editor and also stretch it out like so. So if I go ahead and preview this, this is what we are getting. Oh, this is super quick. So you know what, I'll just stretch this out a little bit. It's still too quick, but I prefer this to the first one. So basically that is it. Now if you are curious in how to render this, just go to composition and click on add to render queue. I already have this listed in the early tutorial I did, beginner's guide to Adobe After Effects, so you can check that out. So yeah, basically that is it.